Hi everyone, it's Lynn Dion from Pink Whisper Designs. Today we're going to make a little home decor project. I'm making this little Christmas project as a gift for someone for Christmas. So I thought I'd show you what I did. So this will be a mixed media project and we're going to be using pretty much exclusively Tim Holtz products today. So let's go ahead and get started. To create the base for our little project today, I've got some Tim Holtz heavy stock, and I've cut 3 pieces to 5 inches by 7 inches. That'll give us a nice thick base to start our project. I'm going to glue those 3 together and I'm going to place something heavy on top and let those dry completely. Now I've got some beautiful stamps from the Stampers Anonymous Tim Holtz collection, and this is called the Curiosity Shop. I'm going to be using those numbers and that typewriter. So I'm going to place those onto some Strathmore Bristol Smooth 100-pound cardstock, and I'm going to take that matte out of my MISTI because these are the thick red rubber stamps. So I'm going to go ahead and ink these up using the VersaFine Onyx Black ink. That's a permanent black ink. And I've got my Stampendable stamp press to press those down nicely. I did end up stamping that 2 times so that it was a nice jet black. So let's go ahead and grab the numbers 2 and 5, and I'm going to mask them off. Now you could cut this stamp apart, but I really didn't want to. I decided to keep this as one long panel of stamps, and I'm going to just mask off that 2. We're going to stamp that using that same ink, and with that Post-it tape over the top, I'll ink it up, then I'll remove that Post-it tape, and you do want to remember to remove it, and then go ahead and stamp the 2 and the 5 for December 25th. So I'm going to mask off the 5 and go ahead and ink that up. And then what we'll do is remove that Post-it tape again, and then we can go ahead and stamp this. We're going to be cutting these out, so I want to just leave enough room between all these items so I can go ahead and grab my detail scissors and cut those out. Now I've got the Tim Holtz backdrops. This is Christmas 2024. I'm going to be using those 3 papers I just showed you. For this first one, I'm going to cut this also to 5 by 7. And that'll be the background for our project. And then with this one, I'm going to cut it to 4.5 by 6.5. That'll go right in the center. And then with this last piece of wood grain cardstock, I'm going to cut it to 2 inches by 4.5 inches. That'll fit down towards the bottom. So now that I have these 3 cut, let's take the Distress Oxide ink and Gathered Twigs and a blending brush, and we're going to just add a little bit of this ink all the way around the edges of that poinsettia paper. And then for this one, I wanted to rough up the edges a little bit first. You could use your little Tim Holtz Distress tool, or you could just take the side of your scissors. I'm using the smaller snips from Tim Holtz, and I'm just going to use that to scrape along those edges and kind of ruffle up and rough up those edges just to give it more of an antique look. And I'll create a few little slits here and there, which we're going to kind of fold back and just give more of that torn look to. So those are those couple of little slits. We'll work on those again a little bit later on. And then I'm going to just brush away any of that excess paper, and we can go ahead and ink up around the edges of this panel as well. And then I'll rough this one up just the same way, and then I'm going to go ahead and add that Gathered Twigs around the edges. And then let's go ahead and glue these 2 together. I'm just gluing that down towards the bottom of this panel. And then I grab my tweezers. These are the reverse tweezers, and I'm going to just clamp onto that little V section, and I'm just going to use those to roll that paper back just to give it, again, more of a torn look. So we can assemble the poinsettia paper onto our heavy weight craft stock. And then let's go ahead and center this one. And then I did want to add a little bit of that ink right around those edges. Now here's where I've grabbed my detail scissors, and let's go ahead and cut this out. And I am leaving just a little smidge of white around the edges. Back to the gathered twigs to add a little bit of color around the edges of this, just to antique it a little bit. And then I did come in some of those areas in the center, just a little bit, just to soften that white. With the 2 and the 5, I'm going to use the Rustic Wilderness ink. And again, I'm just using a small blending brush. And I went ahead and I had cut those out, again, using the detail scissors. And we'll just ink these up. You could do one in red and one in green, whatever you want to do. You could color them with your colored pencils. I just thought this was nice and easy. Now I've got the Distress Texture Paste in the Opaque, which is a really nice white. I've got the Distress Palette Knives from Tim Holtz, and these little stencils. This is a 3-pack of the mini layering stencils, and this is stencil set number 59. So I'll grab that palette knife, we'll pick up some of that texture paste, and let's go ahead and use this little stencil with the circles on it. And I'm going to just be very random about this. I'm going to lay a nice thick layer of this down, and I'm not being real fussy that I'm completing any of the circles. I want it to kind of just have a random look to it. So I'm just going to fill in here and there. Let's add a few more in this upper right hand corner, and then I did decide to add a few down towards the bottom. Now do keep in mind, once you're done doing your stenciling, you want to make sure that you put any of that excess paste right back into the jar. And then make sure you rinse off that palette knife and stencil really well before you put those away. Now I've got the Rock Candy Distress Glitter, and I'm going to sprinkle that all over. While this texture paste is still wet, I'm going to completely cover those little circles with that really pretty glitter, and look at how these little circles sparkle now. So I'll tap away any excess, and then I've got my Distress Mixed Media Heavy Stock, and then I'm going to use this beautiful lace border die. And you can see you get 4 of them in this set, and this little set is called Crochet. So this is a Sizzix Thinlits die, and I'm using my Spellbinders tool-in-one to take out all those little pieces, and I'm using that little bristle end, and if that doesn't get everything out, you can use the little pokey end on the other side. I'm going back to the Gathered Twigs ink and adding a little bit along the bottom edge, and then we'll cut this down to size. Once I have that cut, I'm going to just fluff up the bottom of that lace just a little bit with my fingers. That'll just give it a little bit more dimension. And then we can go ahead and glue this to our project. And I'm using the Nuvo Deluxe adhesive for much of this project. So let's glue that in place. And then I've got these really wonderful chipboard embellishments. These are from the Tim Holtz Baseboards from the Idea-ology collection. And I'm going to ink up along the edges. I've got this really pretty peppermint stripe. And then I've also selected a sentiment that says Making Spirits Bright. And so I inked up the edges of both of those, just again to take away that little cardboard edge, just to finish those off. And now I've switched to the multi-medium matte glue to glue these down. This is a really strong adhesive. It goes on a little bit cloudy and dries crystal clear. So I'm going to center that right below that peppermint stripe, and then I'm going to grab that little coffee cup in the bottom left-hand corner, and that is from the Sizzix Thinlits Papercut Cafe die set. And then I'll run that through my Sizzix Sidekick, and we'll start to color this. And I'm not going to use my pens or markers. I'm just going to grab some Distress Oxide ink. This is the Fired Brick. And then for this layer, I'm going to switch over to the Lumberjack Plaid. And then for the kind of highlight layer on the top, I'm going to use the Spun Sugar. And then for that little oval piece, that will be the coffee or hot chocolate, whatever you want to think of it as. And I'm going back to the gathered twigs. We'll just quickly color that in. But as I mentioned before, you could use some pattern papers for your layers. You could use your watercolor pencils or your Copic markers, whatever you like working with. I just thought this would be quick and easy. And then for the steam, I used Lost Shadow and Hickory Smoke. And I'll just add a little hickory smoke right along the edge just to give it a little shadow. Let's go ahead and glue these together. Just adding some little dots of glue. We'll just layer these up. This is really easy to put together. All of these little coffee mugs are really fun and easy to put together. You could do a whole card with just these coffee mugs. Just do some little squares and place one in each one, or just lay them out as a little background. So these are really fun. Let's place that coffee in there, and then I'm not going to attach the steam just yet. Now I'm switching over to another beautiful die. This is the Christmas Vault series for 2024. It's called the Vault Festive Wreath set. And going back to the Lumberjack Plaid and some of that mixed media heavy stock, I'm going to just ink up some random areas of this. I want to be able to just, again, avoid the coloring. So I'm just adding the color right directly to my cardstock, and then we'll die cut these. And then I've got Rustic Wilderness for my darker green, and I've got the Mowed Lawn Distress Oxide ink for my lighter green. And I do want to do a little bit of blending of those two greens. We're going to be die cutting some of that foliage. So I want kind of a mix in certain areas. And back to the gathered twigs. And I will let this overlap a little bit too, because I want some of those twigs to have a little bit of that brown in them. Now we can go ahead and lay out our dies. And we can run those through the die cutting machine. And I'm going to cut some extras of the greenery, but I'm just going to cut this one poinsettia. And I'm using my Sizzix sculpting toolkit. Got that matte and this little round tool. This is like, it has little ball ends. You get a couple of these, so you have I think 4 different sizes of the little ball tips. And then you have one that will sculpt some veins in your leaves. So it's a really nice little set. And then I'm going to layer up the poinsettia, just adding a little dot of glue to the center. And I pushed down on the center with that ball tool to sculpt these. So it gives it quite a bit of dimension. And then I use that little ball tool to sculpt some of the greenery as well. You just want to push down on it and get them, just get the little tips of the greenery to pop up a little bit. I've added some foam squares all around the back of my typewriter. I'm going to lay that down just temporarily. I wasn't sure exactly if that's where it was going to stay. I wanted to get this little mug in place first. So I'm grabbing some more scrapbook.com foam squares. I'll put them at the top, and then I'll put a little bit of glue right at the bottom where it sits on that little peppermint candy. Now for the greenery, let's start tucking this in. I did want to get all of this tucked in before I put that steam on top of that mug, just to see where everything was going to be. I didn't want anything to get in the way, so I'm just adding a little bit of that glue, and then let's go ahead and glue down the poinsettia. And then I'll continue to fill in that greenery all along the top of that little peppermint stick and kind of making it look like it's kind of tucked behind the typewriter. And I absolutely love this set. By the way, I should mention that I did a really fun clipboard with the typewriter not too long ago, so I will list and link that down below for you. It was actually a graduation gift for my son, and he really enjoyed it. It was really fun to do, very mixed media like this. Then I decided, after I did that, I thought, I just don't want to put this little typewriter away. So I thought this would be a fun little Christmas project. So it looks like you're sitting at the typewriter, typing. We will start off with one sentiment in the little letter, and I will change it out at the end. I'll tell you now, I changed it out to say, Dear Santa. So it looks like we're typing a little letter to Santa. And this will make a great gift, a Christmas gift. So these are fun to make. I think people really enjoy getting these kinds of things for Christmas. I just think it's really personal. You could always add someone's name to this if you wanted. You could be typing someone's name. You could print out some letters and slide it in there. So just have some fun with this. So now I went ahead and glued on that steam, and then we'll glue down the 2 and the 5. I'm going to place that, I'm kind of centering it above the typewriter. So we'll glue those flat, and then we're going to add a little sticker right on top of those. But first, let's go ahead and spatter this entire panel. I've got the Doc P.H. Martin's bleed proof white ink, and this, I love this. I use it a lot. It's a bright white ink, so I've placed some on my glass media mat. I've spritzed it with a little bit of water from my Distress sprayer, and I'll spatter this entire panel. And then I also wanted to spatter it with the brand new Distress Spritz. And you do want to make sure you shake up that spritz really well before you use it. And then I'm going to just spatter it on. I'm just dunking that nozzle down into the liquid and spattering this panel, and that'll give us a really nice shimmer. And that is the walnut stain that I'm using. And then I'm going to add a little bit of peeled paint. So again, I shook that container up really well, and then I'm going to go ahead and spatter this on. And you can see that I covered my little coffee mug and my typewriter before I did this. I just used a couple pieces of paper towel. Now from the sticker book, Christmas 2024, I'm adding a sentiment to my typewriter, but as I said before, I'm going to be switching that out a little bit later on. And then from the Tim Holtz Confections, I'm going to add that little green and white peppermint. And then from the Tim Holtz Word Plaques, I'm going to add a little metal charm to the center of that poinsettia, and that has the number 25 in it. I've cut off the little charm portion, the little loop, and I've just used my steel die cutters to cut away that loop. And I'm going to do the same thing with this other little metal charm that says joyful. So there, I'm just clipping away that excess metal, and then I'm going to glue this one down as well. And I did use my reverse tweezers to clamp that other one in place while it's drying, and I'll do the same thing with this one off camera. Now with that, going back to that rock candy glitter, I added a little bit of adhesive right around the top of that joyful word plaque, and I sprinkled on a little bit of glitter just to give that a little sparkle at the top. And then with the Picket Fence Distress Crayon, I'm going to just push some of that crayon down into these little word plaques. And I'm just kind of forcefully kind of pushing some of that extra ink down in there, or the crayon down in there. And then with a damp finger, if you just get your fingertip damp a little bit, you can really kind of push that down in there and then rub off any excess that's on the top that you want to remove. But I wanted it to look very random, so I'm not going to clean it up perfectly. So that little one on the typewriter says joyful, and the other one inside the poinsettia is the number 25. And then going back to the texture paste in the opaque, I'm going to add some texture paste along the top of that peppermint stick, and kind of like underneath the typewriter, I'm adding a little bit to those little sprigs of greenery, just kind of touching it to those sprigs just to add a little bit of a snowy look right across the top of this. And this little palette knife makes it really easy to do that. It's got that nice pointy tip so you can really get down in there and add that exactly where you want it to be. And while I was thinking of it, I decided to take that green and white striped paper from that same Backdrops collection and cut it to 5x7, and that'll get glued right on the back of our project just to finish off the back portion. With the Tim Holtz sticker book, Christmas 2024, I've grabbed the abbreviated word December. I glued that sticker onto some black heavyweight cardstock and then just cut around it, and then I'm adding a few little foam squares to the back and popping that up. And then I went back to that opaque texture paste just to add a little bit of snow right on the top of that little plaque. And here's where I changed out the sentiment. I did ink around the edges just like I did with the other one, and it says Dear Santa. Now I've got some beautiful Christmas sequins, and I just kind of randomly place those around the card. And these are from Buttons Galore and More, and it's called the Holly Sequins Mix. And this will just give a little bit more sparkle to our project and bring in a little bit more of that red and green. So let's take a quick look at the finished project, and I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. So I'm so glad you joined me today, and I do hope you all have a beautiful, happy holiday season. And there's the back, so you can always sign the back of this and put a little note there, or you could print something out and put it on the back. And then I bought a little easel for mine because, again, I am giving it as a gift, and it'll sit up nicely on a counter or mantle. So again, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you all real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.